Good morning, or depending when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always, told out of Voice of Radio. So today we are carrying on our series where we're looking at every World Championship winning deck that has ever won the Pokemon trading card game World Championships in the Masters Division. We are going to 2012 with Igor Costa's, well, he went and called it Pesadalo Prism, but really, it's Mewtwo Darkrai. And 2012 was the year that I played at the World Championships, so I am incredibly familiar with this deck. It was actually 6 of the top 8 decks at Worlds that year. Make no mistake about it, this was the best deck by a huge country margin. And basically, you just had the 2 best attackers in the format mashed together. Darkrai EX, well, it gave free retreat to Pokemon with Darkness Energy attached, but really it's free energy, 90 damage, and 30 to one of your opponent's bench. And look at Darkrai having 180 HP, 90 plus 30 to the bench was a great pair of numbers. And then you would use Dark Patch to accelerate Darkness Energy, remembering, of course, as I told you in the previous episode, links to the last couple are in the description, we had Junk Arm at the time, so you didn't have 4 Dark Patch, you had 8 if you needed them. We then had Mewtwo that for a double colourless energy, minimum, did 20 damage for each energy attached to both active Pokemon. And then of course, you could just pile energy on and keep doing more and more damage. One of the ways you would do that is with Shaymin. Shaymin could move as much energy from your Pokemon as you like 20 of your other Pokemon. So you could just play Shaymin down, move all your Darkness Energy from Darkrai to Mewtwo and smash. Although bear in mind the best counter to Mewtwo is Mewtwo. So you had to play multiple Mewtwo and essentially start the Mewtwo war. Or start doing this in a situation where you knew your opponent didn't have a Mewtwo to respond. The other attacker in the deck was Terrakion, 2 energy, 30 damage, plus 60 more if a Pokemon was knocked out by damage from an opponent's attack during his or her last turn. Basically, it KOs Darkrai. That's why Terrakion's in there. It's a Darkrai counter. The other Pokemon we have in the deck is Smeargle with the ridiculous portrait poker power that if it was active let you look at your opponent's hand and copy a supporter card. This made decks redonkulously consistent. It was absurd. And of course back then, we're talking about Junk Arm, we had Pokemon Catcher that was just guaranteed gusting as often as you like. We had plus power to do extra damage and, you know, reuse them with Junk Arm. We did play Eviolite here to try and protect Darkrai from stuff like Terrakion, if your opponent wasn't using plus power. We had Super Scoop Up, which would allow you to pick up your Pokemon if you flipped heads, which was actually really good for reusing Shaymin as well as healing your Pokemon. And in terms of supporter cards, it was really quite simple. Professor Oak's New Theory was a shuffle draw 6. Professor Juniper we had at that point was discard your hand, draw 7. Between them, they were crazy consistent. And then you had N to make both players get a new hand equal to their remaining prizes. Good draw in the early game, disruption in the late game. Oh, and then I suppose we should mention Prism Energy, which just let you use Terrakion or Darkrai as appropriate. This was the best deck by a mile, and it wasn't even close. 1 year later, in 2013, Jason Klaczynski would win his 3rd and to date final World Championships with the very imaginatively titled Darkrai deck, which actually sums up the deck perfectly. And this was in a lot of ways just 2012's World's winning deck, but just absolutely taken down to the bare bones. But I mean that in a good way. In terms of straight Darkrai decks, there were others around, but it was not the main deck of the year. It was just Jason Klaczynski did it better. Now, Darkrai remained an amazing attacker, and the deck was basically just, let's get Darkrai rolling as fast and as efficiently as possible. The other Pokemon in the deck, we had Sableye with, you could use Confuse Ray, but really it was Junk Hunt. Put 2 item cards from your discard pile into your hand. So you could use that in the early game while setting up, or you could use that in the mid game as a refresh if you had to. We had Mr. Mime that protected your bench from damage for things like opposing Darkrai, and then you had Keldeo. What Keldeo did was Keldeo jumped into the active. You could attack with Secret Sword, but you didn't really do that. You jumped into the active. And one of the main reasons we needed to do that was at the time, we had Hypnotoxic Laser, which was poison automatically and sleep on a heads flip. So we would use Keldeo to jump into the active to get around Hypnotoxic Laser. And yes, you would play 2, so your Keldeo could not be trapped in the active. Outside of that, we were going for speed. Bicycle saw a bunch of play in the deck. Just an item, let you draw until you had 4 cards in your hand. We had Energy Switch, so that if energy was attached to the wrong Pokemon, you can move it around nice and quickly. We had Dark Claw that let you do an extra 20 damage when attached to a Darkness Pokemon. We had Burbank City Gym, which combined with Hypnotoxic Laser, and between them and Dark Claw, you really were building up the damage nicely. And Ace Specs were around at the time, so we obviously went for Computer Search. Discard 2 cards from your hand, search your deck for any card. It was great for getting you rolling nice and early in the game. This deck was all about speed and consistency, and it worked. Oh, and in terms of supporter line, you just had Professor Juniper and N, but you would then play Random Receiver so that you could find it nice and quickly. No Junkarm though. Unfortunately, by this point, Junkarm was done. Moving forward to 2014, there was once again a super obvious best deck in the format. It was Genesect EX. Verizon Genesect was won by Andrew Estrada that year, but make no mistake about it, this was the best deck, and it wasn't even close. Also, as a fun side note, in the final, Andrew Estrada actually beat Igor Costa, who was, of course, the 2012 World Champion, which was kind of fun. And the way this deck worked, it was all around, shockingly enough, Verizon and Genesect. Verizon had Emerald Slash for 2 energy, that let you do 50 damage while searching your deck for 2 grass energy and attaching them to one of your bench. And when you were done doing that, Genesect EX could come in with Megalo Cannon and do 100 damage plus 20 to one of your opponent's bench. And that was a good attack, but your A-Spec of choice, remember A-Spec were 1 per deck of any description, your A-Spec of choice was G-Booster. Gave you a new attack that for free energy you discarded 2 and did 200 damage. So if you weren't going to get KO'd in the meantime, you could put, say, 4 energy on, discard 2, and then next turn you just attach 1, do it again, and you just go taking big 2 prize KOs. Now, they both had really nice abilities. Verizon stopped special conditions to any Pokemon with grass energy attached, and Genesect was actually a plasma Pokemon, and it had the ability Red Signal. When you attach a plasma energy from your hand to this Pokemon, you got to gust up a benched Pokemon. So not only did you have G-Booster to let you KO anything, we also had the plasma energy that, along with Red Signal, let you gust anything into the active. It was absurdly good. The only other cards we saw in the deck in terms of Pokemon were Mr. Mime to protect your bench, and a single Jirachi EX, because it had the ability Stellar Guidance. By this point, we were at abilities, and it let you, when you benched it, search your deck for a supporter card, whack it in your hand. Phenomenal for consistency. And that was it in terms of Pokemon. And everything else, it was really all about consistency. Sky Arrow Bridge was a great card. Let you retreat for free with either a Verizon or a Genesect. It reduced it by 1 for a basic Pokemon. That was a pretty big deal. We had Muscle Band to do an extra 20 damage, which was a pretty big deal. We had Shadow Triad that would let you grab a Team Plasma card from the discard pile and put it into your hand, which was huge. You could get plasma energy, but mostly it was to reuse G-Booster, because remember, A-Specs you can only have 1 in your deck. G-Booster was great, and was also a plasma card, which was very, very important. Also very important was playing Town Map. It basically let you play with your prize cards face up, which was huge, because if you had G-Booster Prize, you would need to know where it was to be able to find it, because again, you're only allowed to play one copy of it. Also, Energy Switch became quite good, especially, you could switch between Genesect, but it was really nice for taking that grass energy from your Virizion and moving it over to Genesect when you were done with Virizion. And yes, it is pronounced Virizion, even as much as I wish it wasn't. Now, moving forward to 2015, we had Blastoise, which is really just Blastoise Keldeo. And yes, I am talking about the same Keldeo that was played in the Darkrai deck that went and won the 2013 World Championships 2 years earlier, but this time not as a tech, as a main Pokemon. Now, Keldeo at this point, you still would jump in and out, don't get me wrong, but it was largely here as an attacker with Secret Sword. 50 damage, plus 20 more for each water energy attached to this Pokemon. Pile energy on, smash. How do you pile energy on? Using Blastoise. Blastoise, like so many Pokemon in the past that are water type, including Blastoise, let you just attach as much water energy during your turn as you like. You could also use it as a single prize attacker, 60 plus 10 for each water energy attached to it, but generally you get Blastoise, pile energy onto Keldeo, and smash. How do you get Blastoise out? Archie's Ace in the Hole. You can only play it when it's the final card in your hand, but you put a water Pokemon from your discard pile onto your bench and drew 5 cards. That's how you get Blastoise. You don't play Squirtle or any of that. You literally just play Blastoise, you discard it, and then you use it as the only card in your hand, Archie's Ace in the Hole, play Blastoise, and you're off. And because you had to empty out your hand, Execute became a very important card. It's got an ability whereby when it's in the discard pile, you can put it into your hand. And this is important because you have cards like Ultra Ball that discard 2 cards from your hand to search for a Pokemon. But if you've got 1 card in your hand plus Ultra Ball, pick up Execute, discard the other card and Execute, search for the Pokemon, bench it, boom, no hand. Or if you need to discard 2 cards, you pick up 2 Execute, etc. Or even if you just want to play Ultra Ball without discarding any cards from your hand, you play 2 Execute, whack them in your hand, job's a good un. And this made Battle Compressor a very important card, let you discard 3 cards from your deck, and you wanted to discard your Execute, so you could use them from the discard. You wanted to discard your Blastoise so you could play it with Archie's Ace in the Hole, and you would actually generally discard 1 Archie's Ace in the Hole, because by this point we had Versus Seeker that let us grab a supporter card from the discard pile. So by leaving 1 Archie's in the deck and 1 in the discard pile, if you draw into it, you can play it. If you draw into Versus Seeker, you can play Versus Seeker and grab it. It was pretty important. Now, in terms of other Pokemon, we did play Jirachi to grab supporter cards, because again, Archie's Ace in the Hole was too important. We played Shaymin EX here. Yeah, that's right, Shaymin was around by this point. When you played it, you drew until you had 6 cards in your hand. This was a deck where you needed that Archie's combo going off early, so you had to play it. We played 1 Mewtwo EX to counter our opponent's Mewtwo EX. I told you it's the best check for a Mewtwo. We played a Wailord EX because it's got 250 HP, and when you attach an energy, you remove special conditions. It wasn't a great attacker, but it was a very nice damage sponge. And then Articuno was actually one of those ancient trait Pokemon, and if you took a KO with it, you took an extra prize. Now, the best attack was 20 damage, flip 3 coins, 40 more for each heads, but if you took a KO, you took an extra prize. That is absolutely fine by me. Also worth noting, Superior Energy Retrieval. Discard 2 cards from your hand, grab 4 energy from the discard. Execute helps you use it. Blastoise wants the energy, job's a good un. Trainer's Mail lets you look at the top 4 cards of your deck, find a trainer card, and put it in your hand. Again, speed was of the essence with this deck. And because of that, you also played 4 Acrobike. Look at the top 2 cards of your deck, 1 in your hand, 1 gets discarded. Speed was of the essence. You had to get this rolling. Obviously, that means Computer Search was your A-spec of choice. And it's also worth noting we played a couple of Rough Seas to heal up our water Pokemon, 30 damage per turn. And I probably should give a quick shout out here to Floatstone, which let Keldeo retreat for free. Great, so Keldeo could switch in, retreat for free, and then you're golden. And then let's finish off with 2016, when we saw Shintaro Ito win the World Championships with a deck that nobody saw coming, Magical Symphony, which is of course Mega Audino EX. Yeah, Mega EX is around by this point. And this was the deck that launched my channel. I uploaded a video about this deck winning the World Championships the second the World Championships ended in 2016, and that was the first time my channel really started taking off. That gives me a real soft spot for the deck. But this was a massive surprise that nobody saw coming. You see, Mega Audino has an attack for free energy that does 110 to the active, and if you played a supporter card this turn, 50 to one of the bench. But at Worlds this year, there were lots of evolution decks and decks with weaker, lower HP Pokemon, and this just ate them all up. 110 was a perfect amount of damage to KO a Shaymin, and this just ran through all the evolution and weaker decks. It was not a great deck before or after Worlds. Nobody expected it to do well. There's only 2 instances of this deck ever doing well, and the other one was fellow Japanese player Shin Akiyama, who got 22nd at the same World Championships. But for this one tournament, it was perfect. And it really was a Mega Audino deck. You just built up Mega Audino and smashed with it. That was the deck. We played Shaymin ourselves to draw a bunch of cards. We played Hooper EX because when you benched it, you could search your deck for free Pokemon EX and put them in your hand, like Audino and Shaymin, for instance. We played Magearna because if you had Metal Energy attached to your Pokemon, you prevented all effects of your opponent's attacks other than damage, and it really didn't matter what basic energy you played, it might as well be Metal. We had Cobalion as a decent single prize attacker. Well, you could either use it to guard against basic Pokemon, but really 2 energy, 30 damage, plus 30 more for each prize card your opponent's taken. You don't just want to play 2 prize Pokemon, so this was a good 1 prize Pokemon, because if your opponent KOs 2 Mega Audino and 1 of these, they've still got to KO 1 Mega Audino to win the game. They're playing what we call the 7 prize game. And then we had Absol here, that when you benched it, you could move 3 damage counters from one of your opponent's Pokemon to another. Given that you're constantly hitting 50 to the bench, that was a good thing. Now, Audino Spirit Link was huge here because Mega EXs ended your turn when you evolved into them, unless you had the Spirit Link attached, so this was absolutely huge. And we kind of had to play 1 Mega Turbo here, because that let you attach a basic energy from your discard pile to a Mega Pokemon. Huge if you missed the turn 1 attachment onto your Audino. We had AZ to pick up your Pokemon, either to reuse those abilities or just to heal up and prevent prizes being taken. Either one is good. We had Hex Maniac to turn off abilities and slow your opponent down. That could be very good if you're struggling to get set up or, honestly, just for fun. We had Parallel City, which would give your opponent free bench Pokemon, or reduce damage from water, fire, or grass Pokemon by 20. Mostly it's limiting the bench here to hurt your opponent. And then just consistency, like things like Trainer's Mail, for instance. You set up, you smashed with Audino, and that was basically the deck. And nobody saw it coming, but for this one tournament, it was the perfect call. So there we go. That was 2012 to 2016. Tomorrow, I'm going to come back with the last 5 World Championship winning decks, and it's going to be fun. But for now, I want to hear your stories, your memories. I want to know anything you want to tell me about these 5 World Championships. So go nuts in the comment section, but be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWasi. That's where we talk about Pokemon and a whole bunch of other card games. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCG Radio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts, join a Discord, and all kinds of fun things. And get shoutouts on the channel like the lovely Kanto Royalty, who's been a supporter of ours for a long time now and is a very lovely person. So shoutouts to them for the support and the loveliness. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.